Are you experiencing back pain that you can't get rid of? Getting migraines, vertigo, having trouble sleeping, and/or brain fog? Do you feel like your medical doctor doesn't understand your condition? Blair Chiropractic might be the solution you've been looking for. If you've ever been skeptical about this, the two doctors you're about to listen to were even more skeptical than you were when they looked into chiropractic work. But fear not. Get expert guidance from the blonde and the bald, Doctors Beth Bagley and Frederick Scherger. These two doctors have extensive experience beyond the healthcare realm and bringing unique vision and healing to their patients. What do you have when you get a biological analyst and an engineer together? Find out right here on another episode of The Blonde and the Bald. Welcome your hosts, Doctors Bagley and Scherger.
Welcome, folks, to the Blonde and the Bald podcast. I'm Dr. Frederick Scherger. We've got Dr. Beth Bagley, and we also have Dr. Patrick Montgomery from Logan College of Chiropractic.
Logan University.
We're going to call it. I think it says, I suppose it does say, but I've always known it as Logan College of Chiropractic. So,
yep, that's what I knew it as too. But it is Logan University now, and he was my favorite professor. And I always think, whenever I think about Logan, I always think about you, Dr. Montgomery, and how much of an impact you had on me. And especially now knowing you're continuing, even after retirement from private practice, you're still continuing to teach and give your wonderful knowledge to all these students. So thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bagley and Dr. Scherger. I'm very pleased to be here.
Oh, we're so glad to have you.
Yep.
Yes. So real quick about Dr. Montgomery, I was reading, I could read just everything about you. It would take 2 hours on the podcast, but quickly, you graduated in 76 from Logan, and you also are teaching there, but you've done private practice for many years. You just retired a couple years ago from private practice, right? How long ago was that?
Last November will be a year from then.
Wow. And we're going to have to talk to you about that. But you've have countless publications. You have done a lot with the Logan Basic, which is a technique that I'm sure will come up and we'll talk about. But some of the cool things that you've been doing lately is you have let's see, what's it called? Is it LCP, Legion of Chiropractic Philosophers Certificate? Yes. Yep. And and then you also are heavily involved with the Association of Chiropractic or History of Chiropractic?
Association for the History of Chiropractic, that's right.
And what is your involvement with them?
Well, some time ago when I first was teaching at Palmer West, I was one of the very first professors. I was one of 4 full-time teachers, and we started in a little bitty closed down elementary school, and it was actually started by Northern California students that wanted to have a chiropractic college there. They went out and hired their teachers. They went and hired a president, and they stumbled along for a few years under the name of Northern California Chiropractic College. I have a friend that comes to join me every now and then.
Oh, what's your kitty's name?
It's a tiger.
Oh, sweet.
He is a little kitten, and he behaves like one. So he'll be in and out of the picture. But anyway, so we started a chiropractic college out there. They were looking for accreditation, and they really didn't know how to go about it. So they went to Palmer and asked Palmer if they would, quote, take it over. So the board of trustees at Palmer agreed to that. They changed the name from Northern California College to Palmer Chiropractic West. Half the students decided to go there. The other half of the students got a sponsorship from Dr. Sid Williams at Life College, and that's Life College West began.
Wow.
Half the students went up the bay to Hayward. Half the students stayed down in San Jose. So I started teaching there, and while I was starting to teach there, we had a visitor from a doctor who even people at Logan knew a lot about. The doctor's name was Dr. Fred Barge.
Yeah.
Dr. Barge was promoting some of his new texts that he wrote. One of them was a text on scoliosis. It was called Volume 3. He had Volume 1 was torticollis, Volume 2 toward pelvis and then scoliosis. And the president of Palmer West asked all the teachers to get together, and they wanted Dr. Barge to address us. Now, unbeknownst to most of the people there besides me, is that years ago, when colleges were not as big as they are now, some of the schools were only 3-year schools. Some of the schools were 4, some were 2, and so forth. That when a doctor would graduate from one, learn all he could or she could from one college, they'd move on to another college, attend classes there, graduate from that college, and so on and so forth. Sometimes they get 2 or 3 chiropractic college degrees. Well,
wow. I had no idea people used to do that.
That's what Dr. Barge did. He graduated from Palmer. His dad was a Palmer graduate, but he wanted to know more about biomechanics.
Mm-hmm.
So he came down to Logan when Vinton Logan, the second president, was alive, and he was the president of the college. He studied under them, and he became fascinated in X-ray measurements. That's one big thing in Logan Basic is X-ray measurements.
Mm-hmm.
So when he wrote his book on scoliosis, he had done some original research, which is still used today. He came up with a question. He would see someone's spine, a full spine X-ray, and notice a curvature in the lumbar spine that didn't make any sense from the view that was taken. You take a view of AP, the pelvis was level, the sacrum seemed to be level. There didn't seem to be a distortion within the pelvis, but the lumbar spine would go way off to one side. So he goes, that doesn't make any sense. So what he did, he went back into his own practice. He randomly selected about 130 X-rays and studied them and decided to do one more X-ray. The X-ray was because you could not see the sacral base, a normal AP film.
Mm-hmm.
But what he did was, in order to get a good AP film of sacral base, he first had to measure the sacral base angle. So you take a lateral X-ray, either full spine or lateral lumbar, measure that, then set up his X-ray tube to the right amount angle. So when you take the shot, you have a perfect view of the sacral base and L5.
I'm going to break just one second because Dr. Frederick and I are both thinking in our heads right now how similar this is to what Dr. Blair did with his protracto views but of the atlas. And that, anyway, I was just, my brain's going like, oh my gosh, they were like on the same page, but they were looking at 2 different areas and looking at the joint itself rather than just the overall, but looking at that joint. Okay, keep going.
That brings up a good point. But in today's world, so many chiropractors are being taught that you shouldn't take X-rays because it doesn't give anything.
And that's so wrong.
That is core of what we do.
Yes.
It is the blueprint of which we're working with. And so anyway, he took these X-rays. He found some very fascinating things. He found out, first off, that the sacral base itself was malformed. Sometimes it's L5, but most of the time it's a sacral base. He found that most of the women's X-rays, female X-rays, showed that they had a pedestal or a plateau at the top of their sacral base. So he took these X-rays, measured how big they were, measured the dimensions, and he studied the statistics that came from that. He found that only 8% of male pelvises had a plateau at all. Most of them were flat. Another 40% had a very small plateau. Hardly any of them had a large plateau. So most of them were completely flat, is what you would expect when you look at a plastic skeleton. However, the females, only 7% had a flat sacrum. 40% had a low pedestal, and a whopping 45% had a high pedestal. I've done this. I've repeated his research. I found some of these pedestals are 25 millimeters high.
Wow.
In other words, a full inch.
Right.
What was even more fascinating is he found that, so I'm trying to pull these statistics off the top of my head. He found that 67% of the people with plateau was asymmetrical. That was the unleveling that was driving the curvature, even though the rest of the pelvis was level. It was something that you could not adjust away.
Yep.
Because it was structural.
It was structural, built in to the very, very beginning of the base.
Right.
Yeah.
So no matter how many times you want to adjust L5 and take it uphill, it's not going to stay there, because as soon as the person stands up, weight bearing, it's going to roll back.
Yep. That makes so sense. Yep. Yep.
So unless you take that last film, many times you really don't know the full care plan of the patient to help them with their scoliosis. We all know that scoliosis itself not necessarily causes pain, allows for things that do cause pain to happen much more often.
Yes.
And of course, we call those comorbidities, but most of those comorbidities are what we call subluxations.
Right.
So how are we going to adjust them and, quote, get it to hold? You cannot exercise that. You have to lift it with mechanical lift, usually starting either in the heel or what you sit on, called an ischial lift.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, getting back to why was that so important? Well, about that time, many of the early chiropractors who did all this original early research were dying. Many of their memories, their achievements, their research was being lost.
Yeah.
So when Palmer West first started, there was a brand new minted PhD, who was also a psychologist, graduated from the University of Pacific, and he was hired by Palmer West to teach research methodology. Now, at Palmer West, I was an outsider. I was a token Logan guy. And John Miller, the president of Palmer West, wanted that. He wanted one person from this school, one person from that school, one person from that school, trying to get a little more rounded approach.
Yeah.
He hired this brand new, newly minted PhD, started teaching research methodology. Well, he and I were, quote, outsiders. So we started talking. We had our offices right next to each other. And we started talking, and he was moving his big boxes around and hurt himself. And he came limping in the next day, and he come knocking on my door, and he says, Dr. Montgomery, he says, I know that, we've just met, but I have a problem. I said, what's that? I've really hurt my back. I've never been to a chiropractor before. I come from a medical background, and the people that I'm working with on the other side of the school really never says anything to me. Could I ask you to take a look at me? I said, I'd be happy to. So I examined him, found out what's going on. And as a basic practitioner, I said, I need to use what's called Logan Basic. He said, what's that? So I explained to him what Basic was all about. He goes, you got to be kidding me. I said, no, this really works. You'd be so surprised. So I adjusted him. Sure enough, after one adjustment, vast majority of his pain was gone.
Yeah.
Adjusted him the next time, and he was totally straight, feeling great. And so we became a little bit better friends. And right about that time, they did the first conference on literature. And so I was talking to him, said, we need to start collecting this information to talk to the doctors before they died.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And to their studies. Well, he took that by heart. And he always had a kind of a chip on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
He would say, he'd say that some of the stuff that we were talking about was made up stuff. I said, no, it's not. You have to understand this more. So he wrote 7 books. He published 500 papers. Sometimes people liked the papers. Sometimes they hated them. And his name, you probably know, Dr. Sugar, was Joe Keating.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe, I knew Joe. I knew what his approach was. He wanted to goad you. He wanted to challenge you. All right, you say that. Show me.
Right.
It wasn't that he didn't believe you. He says, you have to show me. I'm not going to just take your word for it.
Mm-hmm.
So for half the profession, he pissed them off.
Oh, sure.
And he worked at 5 different colleges, and he ended up, unfortunately, passing away when he and I were working on another project together.
Oh.
But the association was formed in 1980 to do just that, to start to collect the credible history of our great profession. And since that time, for the past 44 years, we put out two journals, peer-reviewed journals a year. Most of them have between 8 to 15 well-documented papers. And some of the stuff that comes up is I've never heard of it. I thought that was wonderful. And that's really where the association comes in at. It's for the people who want to see our past remembered, published, and worked with. Up with our next big research projects.
Right.
So if everybody's listening to this podcast, please join us.
And do we just go on to the website? How do we find you guys?
All you do is go on the website. It's called www.historyofchiropractic.org.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I'll be doing that for sure.
And one of the things that I wanted to share, because I started Palmer the weekend I moved into my apartment before starting Palmer the following week, was the weekend that Fred Barge passed away. So I missed, hearing him. I've heard many of his tapes and his recordings over the years since, because he is that kind of mind, or he was that kind of mind, where he would look at things from a very analytical viewpoint. And as the story that I understood it goes, BJ sent him down to Logan to say, hey, you're an expert at upper cervical, but they're doing something down there with the pelvis that is working clearly. And we don't know where do they intermeld? Where do they work together? Because ultimately, there are, Dr. Bagley and I both use technique aspects from the basic work. When there's just something that's just not quite there from what we do with the upper neck. So it's interesting just to see how these things go back and forth. And again, preserving the history, remembering where we came from. I was listening to something else recently, and I think this holds true beyond just families, but they were talking about family wealth, and, a grandfather will create a business and the son will take it over. But by the time it gets to the third generation, people start forgetting it. And that holds true in institutions like chiropractic, that if we don't really get into it and preserve it properly, it will die.
Yes.
And we can't, and we've got so much amazing stuff, and amazing rich history. And we need to show the receipts of how we actually get people better. In fact, I had a, quick aside, I had a patient today for trigeminal neuralgia. I knew she was going to, she was referred in by another colleague. I adjusted her. Her pain went from a 9 to a 6 within a minute or two of the adjustment. And then by the time she finished her 30-minute rest, she was like down to a 3, and she hasn't been this low in years. Her husband, who has some problems, is going to come in and start next week. And his wife, the wife already said, hey, can I just pay for his right now too? And I'm like,
sure.
Yeah.
No, please don't pay.
So there are the receipts for her. But now we have to show that to the rest of the profession and the rest of the, really help the medical profession along with, understanding that stuff. And again, preserving the history is a step in the right direction. So I highly encourage everyone who's listening to, again, what was the website one more time? We'll put it in the show notes as well.
It's www.historyofchiropractic.org.
Got it.
That's all one word.
Do you guys still have the Facebook page?
Yeah, we have 5,000 people on a Facebook page.
Yeah, I love when you put stuff out there. I'm always commenting on that.
I can't remember his name.
Who runs that?
But there's another gentleman out of Michigan who used to dress up like BJ. Is he still involved with the program?
Not as much, no.
Okay.
But the person up in that area now is John Wolf.
Okay.
John Wolf is the son of the founder of Northwestern.
John interesting.
Wolf. Oh, wow. Okay.
And John's been our journal editor for the past 8 years. He's done a great job.
Wonderful. As an aside, when you were at Logan, was Barge still around, or had he already gone back to Wisconsin?
He had already gone back.
Okay.
Because he left Logan about, I want to say between 61 and 64.
Okay.
And I started at Logan in 73.
Got it. Wonderful. And it's funny because being born in 73, I think it's a good year. But it's funny because I had another doc who was a Grostic doc whose uncles were part of the founding of NUCA back in the day. He finished Palmer in 73. So, yeah, definitely a good year, clearly.
Wow. Yeah, NUCA. I remember when NUCA first came out, and it was actually it was the name of their association.
Right.
Yes.
The National Upper Cervical Chiropractic Association.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And one of my classmates went somewhere out of town to study at one of the very first seminars.
Mm-hmm.
Came back, he was all jazzed.
Right.
And I had been suffering from a right-sided deep headache for years that I just couldn't get adjusted and keep it staying okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when he came back and he was saying, "Oh yeah, it's going to do great. I learned how to do this. I had to learn to do that." Does anyone want to see it? I put my hand up, said, "Yeah, me, right?"
Right.
So I laid down there and he did his analysis. He adjusted me. I've never had a right-sided headache again
Wow.
in 50 years. So
That's
That's
awesome.
incredible.
I do know that stuff works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It does. So,
That's-
go ahead, Dr.
I was going to say, and so much of chiropractic does, I think the bigger picture is like, how can we find what works best for people as fast as possible? So
Yes.
that way they can get back to stuff, because don't ask how many surgeries this young lady had, just for her trigeminal neuralgia.
Yeah.
And as my joke, continues to go, it's like, Doc, I spent this many thousands of dollars. And I'm just like, I need to raise my rates.
Yep. Yeah.
It does feel like that for sure. So currently at Logan, you're teaching a couple different classes. I know philosophy is one of the classes you teach, correct?
I teach the history of chiropractic.
Okay.
Start back to the year 2600 BCE,
Nice.
by way all the way through today's chiropractic. All the different associations started, who's
Mhm.
the purpose, why were they started. Do you know that BJ actually started both our national associations?
I did not know he did both. I didn't know that.
Today's ICA used to be the Chiropractic Health Bureau, and the ACA, going back several formations, started out as the UCA, which he
Right.
started in 1906.
I need that one. Yeah.
So I think it's pretty cool when people say, "Well, we're straight, we're not." Well, no, you're all
You're all from BJ.
It all goes back to BJ and Didi. So,
And then are you still teaching Logan Basic at Logan?
I teach Logan Basic, the third in the series.
A third series. Okay.
Third of the series, we try to pull everything back together again. The very first Logan Basic course is all about the review of the anatomy, how the facets are working, all the biomechanics, in other words.
Mhm.
And then the second basic has to do with, you have the ideal person. They walked out of Frank Netter's drawings and boom, they have a subluxation of the snake. Then what happens?
Yeah.
The face same length, everything else perfect, And they also look at that's when we introduced X-ray analysis.
Yeah.
And it's pretty intense. It's a month's worth of lectures, labs, practice, and they take a test. The third basic has to do with refinements of the technique and talking about the real person who's going to walk in your door with
Mhm.
all kinds of oddities.
Yep.
We also
And they sure do.
talk about the benefits of Logan Basic with pregnancy.
Mhm.
Do the pregnancy protocol. I like to remind my good friends at the ICPA that Dr. Larry Webster was a Logan graduate, and a lot of the concepts behind the Webster technique all comes out of Basic, and
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
they're great people with it. I know Jeannie.
And you are actually going to be teaching outside of Logan at Life University, correct? For a seminar series. What is that all about?
Well, Dr. Claudia Anrig has several irons in the fire. She not only runs a full-time practice, she's a concept practitioner. Not only she has a full-time practice, but she also has an organization to help new graduates get into taking care of pregnant women and infants with ease, with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Great job. I think it's called the First Adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
And then she, with Greg Plower, have decided to put together a large textbook called Pediatric Chiropractic.
Awesome.
Now it's into its third edition.
Mm-hmm.
She came to me after the first edition. She said she wanted to expand the techniques that's offered in the book. So she now has, I don't know, cervical, but she also has SOT. She has AK. She has craniosacral, and she has Logan Basic.
Nice.
So she asked me to write the chapter on that, and some fun things about that chapter. And then I had just finished a long research project. Yeah, you might have been there at school at the time. It was from 2006 to 2009. We did a large study on 47 pregnant women. They started at 20 weeks. We analyzed them and adjust them just with Logan Basic and all the aspects of Logan Basic. We followed them all the way through their delivery and then 2 weeks after. So they would come in once a week. And I had student assistants to write down they did all the paperwork for me. And at the end of that 3-year period, we published a fantastic paper on the ease of labor and delivery with Logan Basic technique.
Nice.
And 47 women went through it. We actually had 2 cohorts. One cohort wanted to have the epidural. The other cohort did not. And they're almost evenly spaced. I didn't try to influence. I just told the pros and cons about doing the 2 different things. And just like in the literature, the women who did the epidural added 12 hours of labor time.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
To have the same outcome. Now, looking at the other side, the part that didn't use the epidural, the average first time labor is between 9 to 19 hours according to the medical literature. Our average was 5.1 hours.
Wow.
Wow.
We had one early delivery. I emphasized on all my pregnant women that full term is not 40 weeks, it's 42 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go beyond 40 weeks, and then their other providers are saying you need to be induced, hold off until at least at the end of 42 weeks. So we did that, and according in Logan Basic, there's another part of Logan Basic that was designed by my father in the 60s to help release the labor and delivery. It's called the perineal contact.
Mm-hmm.
Use that on all these women. Our fastest delivery was 15 minutes, start to finish.
Wow.
Our largest baby was delivered vaginally, no tearing, no stitches, no episiotomy, 11 pounds 10.
Oh, that's a big baby.
Holy cow.
That baby in an hour and a half.
Wow. And was that a first time mother, or was that
That was a second time mother.
Okay, that was the second child.
Arja's first time mother delivered in a little bit more than an hour.
Wow.
And her baby was 11 pounds 4 ounces.
Oh my
No
gosh.
tearing, no episiotomy.
Nice.
And out of that, we put our statistics together, and we found out that the average episiotomy rate has gone down nationally. It's down to about 37%.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's 5%.
Wow.
The cesarean rate nationally has gone beyond 50% of all deliveries are C-section.
It's beyond 50% now?
Oh yes, in some places like Washington State, it's 75%.
Oh my goodness, I had no idea.
We had a 5% C-section rate.
Wow.
Nice.
So,
Now, do you think that's more a relative to the 40-week versus 42-week terms that that's increased because they're pushing the 40-week term?
they're pushing the 40-week term, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
They don't have a baby by 40 weeks. We're going to schedule for your C-section.
Right.
Yep.
All about the convenience of the doctor,
Mm-hmm.
not the convenience of the patient. It is not patient-centered. It is physician-centered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you look at the even the publications by the association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they say there are times that C-sections are necessary.
Sure.
I think the
Yeah.
appropriate C-section should hang between 15 to 18%.
Yeah. And that's probably even high.
Yes, and now it's over 50%.
It's gross.
So we have our work cut out for us.
We really do, and that's an amazing study. I wish, it's sad that I haven't heard about this study. This is, just great stuff, and I'm going to have to go look that up. One of the questions that has popped into my head related to that study is, did you guys look at the APGAR scores for the child? Where were those compared to the national averages?
We did have one APGAR score under 8.
Mm-hmm.
And we also had a survey done by the mom and by the attending, physician. Yeah. Each one of those letters gives you 2 points.
Got it.
So APGAR. So, none of ours had a very bad APGAR score. The lowest was 8.
Mm-hmm.
We did have one baby that was breech. She was our smallest baby, however. She was 6 pounds 8. The average baby was over 9 pounds.
Wow.
There are some problems with our mother who had this baby. One of the pieces of advice I told my pregnant women is to watch their salt intake.
Mm-hmm.
They can salt it, but they really have to watch how much they salt, because in some ways, to a woman's body, a period. If you ask most women who are on their period, how much weight do you gain? Oh, 2 pounds, 3 pounds is water weight.
Yeah.
In a pregnancy, it's like a 9-month-long period.
Mm-hmm.
And hard time getting rid of the salt. Therefore, they start gaining weight over a period of time. The amount of weight per month, on the average, that you gain is 2 to 3 pounds. And when you start hearing they gain 60 pounds, 70 pounds, that's not fat.
Oof.
That's water.
Yeah.
Wow.
And water gets in the way. Well, she had gained quite a bit of water weight. And I didn't see her for about 3 weeks, and she came back in. She looked like she had blown up. So I asked what happened. I said, well, my husband and I like Mexican. I said, okay, cool. How many times a week did you eat Mexican? 3 times a week for the last 3 weeks. Her feet were twice as thick as they were before. She had to take her rings off real early in her pregnancy, which is one of the key things. You want that ring to be able to be taken off at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That means the water retention is okay.
Right.
But anyway, that's all that's going to be coming up in the presentation I'm making for with Dr. Claudia at Life.
Nice.
I think my weekend is in November, but I don't know for sure. I'll have to check.
Sure. We'll have to get the link because
if somebody's that's an in-person one, right?
That's an in-person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You cannot demonstrate and learn technique over the internet.
You really can't.
Totally agree. Speaking of, how did you handle all that COVID stuff that was happening a couple years ago when students weren't allowed to touch each other?
Oh my God. In some ways, it's a perfect storm.
Mm-hmm.
When all this started, it happened, the announcement came through when we were on spring break.
Yes.
They decided to extend spring break another week. And so we have teachers learning how to make their presentations online, and the students could stay at home, right? Well, we came up with how can you teach technique via Zoom? Well, at first, the uppers at Logan would say, "Oh yeah, you can do it. Just use that teddy bear, use this, and use that."
Yeah.
And during that presentation, I raised my hand and I said, Dr. McDonald, Dr. McDonald, Dr. Bono at the time, and Dr. O'Reilly. And I said, I want to let you know something. A few years ago, before you guys came here, we had a push down in Jefferson City, which is the state capital, for a group that wanted to get licensing law passed for naturopaths. It was not allowed here in Missouri at the time. The person who was presenting it, I thought, did a poor job. And 2 of our representatives from Logan went to testify. One was Dr. Norm Kettner, and another was, I forget who it was, but he went down there too. And they said, you cannot teach adjusting online. One of the things that was in the proposed naturopathic law was that they would teach adjusting, what they call manipulation, online, and that would make them proficient to do it.
Oh my gosh.
We testified to get that, saying that how many hours did it take for a chiropractor to learn how to do this? There's over 200 hours. They're going to do this in 4.
Right.
And we said how safe it is. You had to learn how to make sure you are doing it right. It's under supervised, licensed doctors. With their hands and so forth. And we got defeated. And I looked at these 3 administrators and says, do you now want to go back down to Jefferson City, say, oh, never mind, it's okay to do this?
Yep. That's such a good point, because that's the hypocrisy of it. And there was so much hypocrisy with chiropractors during COVID, because we're supposed to be vitalistic. Don't be afraid of your sick patients. Tell your sick patients to come in. That's
Exactly.
who you need to see as your sick patients. And it was like, wear the mask, spray all the Lysol all over you. And it's like, that's the opposite of what most chiropractors who have some sort of philosophical base are. And it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And I know it was a struggle because I had some students come through during all of that into my office, and how much they weren't learning and sitting in front of screens.
Yep.
I'm just glad that's over.
And they did not sit on these screens. We started with a thing called Canvas, and we did all these the recordings, and the students had to sit and watch them. Well, little did they know, and little did most of the teachers know, that in Canvas there has a special little button that you push, where you get a list of all the students, and you get to see how much did they listen to each lecture.
Yeah.
Not just much, but when. The first 5 minutes, then skip for another 20 minutes, see the next 5 minutes, and so forth. And so I brought this to the dean at the time, at the halfway point, at the midterm time. And I said, look at this. I have these students here, those 90 students in my class. According to what I just did, and I went through it and added everything up, over half of them didn't watch anything.
Oh, wow.
Of the half that did watch it, only 10% watched the entire thing.
Oh my gosh.
So therefore, only 10% of 50% got to see the entire thing. And so he said, oh, it'll all come out in the assessments. Okay, we'll watch for the assessments. They came in the assessments, and they were all over the place. And I said, and I didn't say it to the students, kept it to myself. I said, if you ever became a chiropractor, I will never allow you to touch my back.
Mhm.
Because you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, it's interesting for a profession that is hands-on. And for so many people that are drawn to this profession, they're not academics. They will never, they're going to, they'll be a B.C. student all the way through for the more academic, science-based classes. But for the hands-on stuff, they are A's and, 4-point all the way through.
Yep.
It's a shame. The institutions basically said, you don't have to actually do hands-on for what is really a hands-on profession 9 out of 10 times. So
I do know that in the school's defense is that they're being regulated by the Department of Education.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if you don't do this, we'll shut you down.
Right.
Oh, and that is tyranny, is what that is.
And now we have the Chevron defense having been overturned. Maybe that won't be a problem going forward, because an overreach of governmental institutions, and we could go down rabbit holes about why all the federal funding is actually pretty bad at this point, because now again they basically say they sort of dictate what they think should be taught without understanding what we need to be taught to actually be good doctors and ultimately entrepreneurs and business people as well as adjusters. So, it's crazy that way. Speaking of which, tell us a little bit about your practice. What was your practice like, and how was that for those many years that you were in private practice?
Well, when I first graduated, I graduated from Logan College. At that time, Logan was straight chiropractic college. We didn't have any physiotherapy. I was not taught in a core curriculum. We didn't have a lot of rehab. It was mostly basic sciences, clinical sciences, and then lots of adjusting.
Mm-hmm.
And we all graduated. I thought we were pretty damn good adjusters.
Mhm.
Good.
First practice, my dad was a straight chiropractor. He did almost nothing but basic technique. And he would use a type of a field called local adjusting, called Spears adjusting. Spears is not taught too much anymore, but it's a fantastic way of adjusting the full spine. Leo Spears was the founder of Spears Chiropractic Hospital in Denver.
Yes.
That had 600 beds, and he had his own adjusting technique. It's called the Spears Painless System Adjusting. Well, that's what he had used, and I learned my adjusting basically from him. So, but I was a little bit more interested in nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
I had a great nutrition teacher. He had a double PhD, one in nutrition, one in biochemistry. And so therefore he could explain how the biomechanics or the biochemical points of physiology would be interacted with nutrition. And so I got real involved with that. And I was a student member of the Council of Nutrition at the time. But when I start seeing patients, my dad gave me the offer to start my practice in his office because he's still a teacher at Logan.
Mm-hmm.
So he teaches during the day, and he sees patients late afternoon and evening. And he had a great work ethic. He'd start 6 o'clock in the morning with a coffee at the school. School started at 4 to 7 in the morning. 5 minutes between each class, 20 minutes for lunch, and you're done by 1:15. So therefore, you could have a practice the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the 70s, when the CCE came through, they said you have to have more hours and da 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 da. And so they weren't being finished until about 3:30 or 4 o'clock.
Oh,
My patients during the day, but the kicker was I had to stay there to watch him take care of his patients, which was outstanding opportunity. Because
yes.
he'd sit on one side of the bench, I'd sit at the other side of the bench, and he'd see his patient until 9 o'clock at night.
Oh, wow.
And he did this for 32 years.
Wow.
So I worked with him for a couple of years. And then when he passed away, I needed to move my office a little further. And I greatly expanded my office at the time because he had a very small, pretty much a one-man office. And so I moved up a little bit bigger. I wanted to do more stuff. And I started seeing patients of all different kinds. At that time, my girlfriend, who became my wife, she had a degree in business administration, so that worked out great. But she ran the business part of the practice. I ran the healthcare part of the practice. And one time she said, "I have a slogan for your practice." And the slogan was, 8 to 80 blind, crippled, and crazy come knocking on your door. And it's a little bit odd because I start seeing my patients about
At
8
birth.
8 days after birth. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'd see patients all the way through until their 90s. It didn't matter what it was. They could come in with a knee problem, come in with a mid-back problem, come in with a headache, whatever. And if I didn't know how to do it, I'd go out and learn how to do it. So I started taking more and more seminars and started to expand what my abilities to do different things. I always took x-rays on my patients.
Yep.
I would always approach my practice from a basic technique point of view. And so I continued to do that. I probably moved to California to help start a new college out there. And when I went out there, I never thought I'd be taking care of athletes because I wasn't an athlete. You could give me a basketball and I'd throw it in a basket and it'd land someplace else on earth.
Yep.
It never get very, very good. But my daughter wanted to become a swimmer. My dad was a pro football player at one time. My mom played professional tennis. Everyone else in my family were great athletes but me. So when we went out to California, I didn't fully understand AK. I thought you had to learn AK to be take care of athletes. Well, I started taking care of swimmers and learned more and more about biomechanics of swimming. And the good people at the ACA decided to start a certification class, a CCSP, and they want to take over all the venues. You had to see it, CCSP. We won't let you take care of athletes. I said, look, man, almost every one of you that are saying this, you were my student at one time. I have proof to do, and you're going to tell me that I can't take care of athletes. Your courses? So I went ahead and did it. I got my CCSP, and so by the time I left practice in California, I had to find 5 different chiropractors to take over my practice.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
I had a lot of kids, a large pediatric practice, a large pregnancy practice, a large athletic practice. I had a large workers' compensation practice,
Mhm.
and I had a large elderly practice. So I couldn't find any new graduates or even graduates out in the field for very long that could handle all those patients.
No.
So I had to sell off parts of my practice to 3 different chiropractic groups in
Wow.
order to help patients. So I came back to Logan and said, "Can you teach this?" "Sure." "Can you teach that?" "Sure." The longer you're in practice, the more you learn.
Mhm.
And eventually I've collected 15 different certifications.
Wow.
And one of the best ones I ever took is one that I've always wanted to take the time I was a student, was the one that Dr. Bard started, which is the Legion of Chiropractic Philosophy.
And that's the one you just recently got, correct?
Yes. When I moved to, when I was still in California, they announced this new program. I had to fly to Palmer to take this. I said, I really can't do it right now. If you want to do this again, please let me know. I said, okay, great. So they started the program. Dr. Bard died.
Yep.
And the people who took it over have done a bang up job. They've done a great job.
That's good to know.
And but it was only the one time. So by the time I was ready to take it, it wasn't offered again.
Mm.
They finished in like 2001 or 2002. So I moved to St. Louis. I had a little bit more free time. Teaching is people ask me, when are you going to retire? I said, I am retired.
Mhm.
Before, when you're in practice and teaching, you're working 60 to 80 hours. When you're only teaching, it's a lot less.
Mhm.
A little bit more, quote, free time.
Mhm.
So when I heard this, the new program was going to start up now about 3 years ago, I said, I'm in. And of course, by that time, some of the upper people at Logan weren't real keen about sponsoring me. I says, I don't care. I'll do it on my own.
Yeah.
Right.
So I talked to Rob Sinnott, and I took the first year, learned a lot, learned a ton of stuff that I had heard about, but didn't have the full picture.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And by the time I was done with that, they said, we're going to start off the rest of the diploma program. Do you want to take it? I said, absolutely. So some of the other students in that class were students of mine at Logan. Some of the students that there were students of mine in California.
Oh, wow.
So it's really kind of a fun thing. I really encourage you really want to learn chiropractic. You really want to know how chiropractic affects the human body and why you're in this to begin with. I'd advise you to take these set of courses. I hear that there's one down at Sherman called the ACP, the Academy of Chiropractic Philosophers, which aligns up with the LCP. Both of them feed into the diploma course.
Right.
Okay.
So I have my third weekend coming up in August. And then that's when we have to announce our subject, what we're going to do our thesis on. And the thesis has to be completed by the end of the third year, which will be next year.
Wow.
And not that you have to divulge now, but have you decided on what you're going to do your thesis on?
I have some ideas.
Okay.
I have
I
some
like it.
ideas.
I like it.
Can't let you, share them because somebody's going to grab
Somebody's
it.
going to take it. Don't let them take it.
Yeah, well,
One of the 50 people listening. Thank you, the 50 people who are listening.
no matter everyone is listening. And they should learn as much as they can about chiropractic. Because chiropractic is not a job.
No.
Chiropractic is a way of life.
Yes. Yes, it is. It surely is. Well, it's been so nice having you on this podcast. And I know we could talk to you for about 4 more hours, but we told you we would spend an hour with you, and it has been an hour-ish. So is there anything you want to end on? Anything that you wanted to talk about that you didn't get a chance to tell our listeners today? What about just if you had advice for a person who isn't a chiropractor who's considering chiropractic school, what would you tell them?
I would research the different chiropractic colleges,
Mm-hmm.
but what their reputation is, and then really consider why you want to be a chiropractor.
Yeah.
What do you want to do with that? Are you there to earn a living? Are you there to change someone's life for the rest of their life?
Yeah.
Do you want to do the things that no other profession can do? Then think about chiropractic and choose the right chiropractic college.
Mm-hmm.
All the colleges are really good, but some are better than others at certain aspects.
Agreed.
And that'll be another hour of discussion.
It would be, and some of it might get you in trouble. Just joking. Well, thank you again for having us. And I would tell people where they could find you in practice, but they can't find you in practice anymore. But you can, if you decide to go to Logan University, you can have him as an amazing professor, or you can see him teach that seminar in Life for University coming up, we think in November, but obviously you can look that up. And I will be joining the Chiropractic History Association for Chiropractic History. Is that what it's called? I've got it on my phone right now. And I'm just so happy that you've had us. Dr. Sugar, where can anybody find you if they're looking for you?
I'm at KeystoneChiroSPI.com, Keystone Chiropractic in Springfield, Illinois.
And I'm at Precision Chiropractic. I'm on the west side of St. Louis, Missouri. Precision Chiropractic, STL.com. Again, thank you, Dr. Montgomery, for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been real fun.
It has been fun.
Thanks much. We'll see everyone else back in another week with another episode of The Blonde and the Bald.
That's all for today's episode of The Blonde and the Bald. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoyed today's show with Drs. Bagley and Sugar, remember, don't give up and just live with the pain. Come back next week and get more answers and solutions. Visit our websites at KeystoneChiroSPI.com and PrecisionChiropracticSTL.com for more info, and catch all the episodes of The Blonde and the Bald.